So, hello, my name is Peter Crumpler. I'm the Associate Minister at St. Paul's Church in St. Albans. And today I'm speaking to Joanna Brown, who is one of the church's mission partners and is currently based in Uganda, but is home in St. Albans at the moment. So just remind us, Joanna, what is it you do in Uganda? And you've been there, I think, about 2 years.
Hi, thank you first of all for having me. It's lovely to be on today. I've been working in Uganda for just over 2 years. I work with an organisation called Jenga, and we are based about 6 to 8 hours from the capital. And it's called Jenga, which in Swahili means to build. And so we are trying to help people build solutions to their own problems. So to build sustainable solutions, to see long-term community development. It's a great organisation to work for.
You're by training a midwife. I think you trained in London, if I recall. So how do you find yourself working for Jenga? And are you working as a midwife, or are you working as something very different?
Yeah, so I think for a long time, from when I was quite young, I had always thought about working abroad and didn't quite know what to do, and then found my way into midwifery and was a midwife for 3 years in the NHS, but just felt more and more pulled to do something else, as much as I love the NHS work. And I was speaking to Andy Pike one I think time after the evening service, and I went up for prayer to kind of get direction, and he said to me, "Oh, I'm actually a trustee for a small charity in Uganda. Would you like me to mention you?" And I said, "Yes, please." And he went out to visit, I think the following week, and came back and said, "Oh, they're really excited about the possibility of you working with them." And so went from there, really. So I am doing midwifery work. I'm teaching women's health in the communities, which is a lot of the midwifery stuff, but I'm also running a sanitary pad project called Every Girl, which St. Paul's and a lot of the congregation have really generously given to, which I'm really grateful for. Thank you so much. And so with that, we train women and volunteers in the community, men and women, to train girls how to make reusable sanitary ware out of items that they have themselves, because many girls don't have access, and that limits their ability to go to school, and many other aspects in life. And then the second part of the project, we are teaching mostly men about women's health, because we found you have to empower women and men together at the same time. So it's been good fun, a little bit different to my NHS job, but yeah, it's great. I've been really enjoying it.
And are there issues teaching or promoting women's health in a culture that is, for what I understand, quite sort of male dominated? Do you really have to sort of push a door open to make that happen? Is it quite difficult, Joanna?
So I found that people are actually really grateful for any information you can give them. We work in some slum communities and some quite rural communities, and there a lot of people won't have had the opportunity to go to school because you have to pay the school fees, and a lot of people can't afford that. And so they have very limited knowledge, and even they don't realize that it's the man, it's in the sperm that decides the gender of the child. And so a lot of things like domestic violence can actually, if you teach about these kind of things, that can start to change the culture of how women are viewed. And so I've found that by teaching just women, the women are really grateful, but they all said to me, "This is great, but you need to teach my husband this, because nothing's really going to change unless my husband understands this." And so that's where our kind of focus has sort of moved on to teaching men as well. And actually the men have been really responsive. They have many questions, really interested, and they don't shy away from asking questions that I would think would be maybe quite difficult to ask. I was once asked, why is it wrong for me to abandon a child who is disabled and just leave them to die? And so when people are open to asking, then you can answer those questions, and you can talk about the value of each individual, that we're all loved by God, and all these things. And so people are actually quite open. I think because I'm a midwife, that really helps. People really take advantage of that. So yeah, it's been really nice to be able to just give knowledge. And I think people really appreciate that.
Are people more receptive because you are a European in that context? Or is it better for you to train local women or men for them to pass on the training? Or is it both? How does it work?
So I think there can be a mixture of the two. I think people in some ways are very receptive to Europeans because they think, you know, they've had experiences before, but then equally a lot of the European experiences haven't necessarily been positive. And so being a midwife, I think that makes a difference because people can appreciate that I have that professional background and I have something that I've trained in that I can help with. And so I think having that midwifery qualification enables me to kind of give that information in a way that someone who maybe didn't have that might not be able to, or they might not listen so much. But that's kind of why a big focus of my training is in training volunteers to then go and teach girls in their communities. And in the men's health teaching, it's training volunteers again to then teach 2 lesson plans out to men in their communities. So a big focus of what I'm doing is actually empowering locals to then go out and teach so that actually the message will be received better. And I think when you empower other people, that kind of, yeah, I think it has more of a long-term impact. And I think it should really be about me sort of empowering other people rather than me just doing it myself. So yeah, I think that's a big focus on Jenga as well, is about kind of enabling other people to be their own solutions to problems, which is great.
How has this year been different? Presumably because of COVID, your work has been quite a bit curtailed.
Yeah, so COVID made everything quite different, I think, all over the world. We had a big lockdown similar to the UK. A lot of the community work was put on hold, but Jenga was really creative, actually. We were still able to work because of our work in communities. And so each of the staff members went out and they were given a load of soap. What else did they have? Sugar, rice, things like that. And they went out to, I think, around 5,000 families were reached. And as they went out, they're also sort of serving. So some of our staff members were like helping clean houses and, you know, just spending time with people and providing social support as well. And I think we reached about 46,000 people, giving them hand hygiene techniques we were teaching them. And it was great, actually, when we came back the first day the office was opened, hearing everyone's stories about all of the people that they met and about how they managed to see changes and enable people to even be able to wash their hands properly, making taps out of jerry cans, things like that, which was really nice to see how excited the staff were by what they'd managed to achieve in their communities. So that was really lovely. And all cars were stopped, so no vehicle was allowed to go anywhere unless you had any kind of I don't know what the right word is, but unless the government has specifically said you have a license, no vehicle could go. So no one could get to the hospital. So there's no real ambulance service in Mbale in Uganda. So Jenga used their vehicles instead of going out to different programs to then go and pick up medical staff, take them to the hospital so they could reach, and then picked up people who needed it in emergencies. So it was great to be able to help in that way as well. And then for me personally, in the first 2 months, everything was kind of shut down. So my work became more admin focused. And I started taking on the social media, which has actually been really fun. And then when we went into the office, it was just changing tactics a bit. So where we'd had big group meetings, then we met with smaller numbers of sort of 15 to 30 instead. And again, teaching things as part of trainings like hand hygiene and how to properly wash your hands, and giving out face masks, checking people's temperature, doing the hand sanitizer, all those things. So in a way, it's been very different, but I think it's actually been, in a weird way, quite a special time. And we've seen some lovely things out of a very difficult situation, which has been great.
Was your area of Uganda very hard hit by COVID?
So thankfully, God has really protected us in Uganda. We have no idea why. We think it's to do with the lower age that we see. So I think the average age in Uganda means that we have the smallest risk of morbidity with COVID, is what I was reading in The Economist. But yeah, so we've actually done really well, and we shut down the country very early. So the borders were shut right at the beginning, towards the end of March, and they only open again in October. And so I think at the moment we have maybe 33,000 cases since March, and maybe 250 deaths, something like that. So we have done very well, I think a lot better than we were perhaps anticipating, because we have a lack of ventilators and things like that. So really grateful for that, but I think it is on the up at the moment.
Was it a hard decision for you to decide to stay in Uganda rather than come back to the UK?
Yeah, it was quite difficult. So I think it sounds as similar as how things were in the UK from what my family and my friends have been saying, but I think things were changing so fast. So you kind of made your decision to stay based on one thing, and then something else would change, and then something else would change. I think the first 2 weeks I was on the phone to my parents almost every day being like, this is what the government is saying. Are you still happy for me to stay? And I had to go to Tony, because I'm a mission partner of St. Paul's, and speak to Tony. That was the request of Jenga. And say, are you happy for me to still be here under these circumstances? We have a very low number of ventilators, and so just having very real conversations about what would happen if you got sick, but also what would happen if someone at home got sick and I couldn't get home. So yeah, it was quite a hard decision on that basis. Just more for me, the worry about people at home and what was to happen if I couldn't get back. And I think for all of us, it's made us realize that we have these kind of safety blankets that we think are there to kind of keep us safe. And for me, one of those was, I can come, if anything happened, I can come back from Uganda anytime. And then of course the border's shut. And so, yeah, I remember reading BBC News and thinking, oh gosh, it's going to be 2 years until the vaccine comes. I might not see my family for 2 years. So yeah, it was a bit of a tricky time, but God is good. And I know it's been difficult for us all in so many different ways.
What do you think God has been teaching you in Uganda in this past year?
So I think, as I say, all of those things that I had been, without realizing, thinking that they were keeping me safe, which really aren't there, kind of fell away. And I am a natural worrier. My natural response to things is to worry and to think about the future and the long term. And I remember my housemate, I just sort of burst out in tears when I saw the BBC News about the 2 years. And my housemate said to me, I think you need to take it one day at a time. And I think that's really wise advice. And so one of the two things I learned was actually learning to trust on God for that day ahead of me, and that I have no idea what's going to come the next day, but let's look at today and trust God for today. And that really, really helped me. And I remember reading in the Bible about God being a light to our path, but really it's not, a wide light that, the light in the room, for example, it's only really lights up for the step ahead of you. And I think when we think everything's normal, we kind of get out of the habit of trusting in God, or I did anyway, because of what I thought was there as a support security blanket. And then when that went away, I had to really learn that lesson. So that's one of the two things. And then the second thing for me was just really, I remember Tori mentioning this in a sermon Christmas, not last year, year before, but that God is the eye of the storm, or the eye of the hurricane. So everything around it can be complete chaos, complete disarray, but inside, in the center, there's complete peace. And so particularly initially, I was very anxious about everything, checking the news all the time, really worried. And I remember praying and being like, okay, this can't continue. I have to really trust in God. And I don't know what happened, but I had just this real sense of peace. And I think for me, it's trying to find God, because his perfect love casts out all fear. And so that's been a real learning point for me this year as well, is every time I've been worried about something, to try and give it to God and pray and ask for his peace, because his perfect love casts out all fear. So that's been a really special thing that I've been learning on my journey with God this year.
When do you go back to Uganda?
Yeah, so I hope on the 6th of January. At the moment, who knows what will happen. I know if after the last announcement from Boris Johnson, things changed, and I think 40 countries shut their borders to us. So I'm waiting to see what happens, but hopefully it will be the 6th of January that I fly out again. Yeah.
How can we be praying for you and supporting you, Joanna?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me as mission partner and for praying for me and supporting me. I so appreciate it. Some of the main prayer points would be safety. We have an election coming up on the 14th of January, and whatever is decided, there is a high probability that there could be some violence associated with that. We had some riots about 2 weeks before I came back here, and about 52 people died. So prayer for peace would be great, and for, yeah, just for God's peace and love to be there would be great. Wisdom for me with my project would be another big one. Just knowing what God's saying I should be doing would be great. But yeah, in terms of that, I have a WhatsApp group. So if anyone wants to hear, I usually post about every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks, just a snapshot of what I've been doing and some prayer points and sending some photos. So if you'd like to join that, you're really welcome. We'll put up some details, so you please do contact me and I'll add you in. And then also the other thing to say is that I myself, my living expenses and also the project are based on people's generosity. And if you'd like to get involved, you're really welcome. Please do send me an email. But thank you so much for the prayer and support. And it's been so lovely to feel a part of St. Paul's, particularly with the online services and things, even though I'm so far away. So thank you for keeping me plugged in and for all your support.
Thank you for all that you're doing to further God's kingdom out there in Uganda. And thank you for talking to me today.
Oh, thank you. I've really enjoyed it.